So, hello students, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy previous year questions analysis. Now, in this session, we will be discussing few previous year questions which were asked by UPSC mains examination in the year 2022, right? So, in this session, we have a set of questions that are asked from Indian economy section. Okay, so the first question that we are going to discuss is about the food processing sector in India. Okay. Now the question here asking about the elaborate the scope and significance of the food processing industry in India. Now in recent times the food processing industry has been gaining a lot of prominence and lot of importance because food processing industry particularly is very important because it adds value to the existing food produce and it also reduce the post harvest losses in agriculture sector, and in fact it also increases the farm incomes, so thereby achieving the goal of doubling farm incomes by the government. Okay, so we have an ambitious goal of doubling farm incomes, so therefore through food processing sector, so it has a set of benefits or the advantages. The first benefit is it adds value to the food produce so that we can explore the export potential of the food produce. Secondly, it also reduces the post-harvest losses, food losses. Now, if you look at the trends in Indian agriculture, the post-harvest losses are highest. Okay, so in order to minimize the post-harvest losses, the food processing industry has to be further encouraged. Now, after that, in order to increase the farmers' income for better price realization of the farmers, food processing industry also plays a crucial role. Now, apart from that, it also creates a gainful employment opportunities for the people, right? So in fact unemployment is a major problem, particularly in rural areas. So because of the unemployment in rural areas, that leading to the migration. Okay, so rural urban migration. Now in order to prevent migration and in order to provide gainful employment opportunities for the youth in rural areas, and in fact self-help group women, so they also start micro food processing units. So therefore food processing industry has a crucial role in economic growth, economic development, and women empowerment, employment creation. So in this context, the question has been asking that elaborate the scope and significance of the food processing industry in India. Now firstly, understand food processing industry is poised for huge growth because of its huge potential, its contribution to GDP, and its export potential. It is poised for huge growth, and if you look at the trends of Indian food processing sector, it has been contributing, its contribution has been increasing significantly at the world stage year on year. Okay, so the food processing sector has also been significantly contributing for the overall food trade of India. So what are the benefits or advantages? We have already discussed those advantages. Now, so Indian food processing sector is in fact emerged as a high growth and high profit sector. Okay, so the government has started incentivizing, or government has started encouraging the food processing industry as a a potential industry. So therefore, since it has a huge potential, it is considered as one of the high growth as well as high profit sector in India. So why? Because it's a huge potential. It's huge future potential in terms of export, employment generation, and women empowerment. Okay, so in terms of reducing the post-harvest losses, because it adds value to the agricultural produce. Now when we add value to the agriculture produce or any other raw material, the value will significantly increase. So therefore it ensures a better price realization, and if any entrepreneurship starts in this sector, they will also earn higher amount of profits. So therefore it is considered as one of the most high growth and high profit industry. Now if you look at the food processing sector at a glance, so firstly understand it is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Okay, overall food processing sector, so because of increased emphasis on the sustainable foods, better foods, and organic foods, food processing sector has been growing at a tremendous pace. Secondly, the total number of population or the people who are dependent on the food processing industry is around 1.3 billion population. equal to the size of India's population. So they are such a huge amount of consumers are dependent on the food processing industry. So after that, 100% of FDI in food processing sector is allowed by the government. Okay, so that is also a major factor where we attract the private investment, expertise, capital and technology into the food processing sector. Now, the advantages of the private sector participation in the food processing industry or any other infrastructure projects, yesterday we have discussed. Now, after that, the government has also brought GST, okay, one nation, one tax reform. So that also significantly reduces the cascading effect of taxes. Now, significantly reducing the cascading effect. Now, what is a cascading effect? Cascading effect generally involves tax on tax. So that, makes a product increase its prices, and it is particularly not affordable for the consumers. So however, because of the one nation one tax, the prices are becoming more and more competitive and affordable for the consumers, and it is also an incentive for the food processing sector to set up their respective industries here. Now, if you look at the global rank of India in terms of food processing industry, so India ranked second in total food production, and India ranked first in terms of production of several agriculture commodities. So because our advantage is agriculture produce, okay, so a largest number of population are dependent directly and indirectly on agriculture sector, and we have also been producing various food products. In fact, the fruits, vegetables and other pulses cereals. So therefore, we can rightly leverage the food processing sector as a high growth industry. Now, after that, there are key potential drivers in the food processing sector. So what are those potential drivers in the food processing sector? So firstly, in the Indian food processing industry, increasing the spending on food products. So in recent times, the consumers have become more and more health conscious. Now they have been investing or spending more on the processed foods. Okay, so this is the first major driver, and the second major driver is increasing urbanization and urban lifestyle of the people. Now we have been experiencing urbanization at a rapid pace. The urban population has been increasing. Now with the urbanization, the eating patterns, the lifestyle patterns of the people are also changing. So this is the second major driver of the food processing sector growth. So after that, we need to talk about the retail sector and the private sector presence in the food processing as well as the retail sector. So growth of organized retail and private label presentation in the food processing industry. So they are usually coming up with attractive advertisements, and they are promoting the processed foods, and that particularly driving the consumption of the processed foods. Now after that, we need to talk about the demand, the growing demand for the food processing industry. So because now in recent times, there's a concept called fortified food. Now fortified food, generally what happens that certain nutrients are added to the existing foods so that the nutrient deficiencies can be met through the fortified food. So in fact, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India has also providing a symbol indicating a fortified food. So in this context, the consumers are looking for the fortified and better nutritious food, and the food processing industry has become a potential alternative in this regard. Now after that, we need to talk about the market size of the food processing sector in India. Now Indian food and grocery market is the world's 6th largest one. Okay, so if you look at the food processing sector across the world or in the entire world, it is the 6th largest sector. Okay, now even the entire food processing and grocery market, 70% comprising or contributing to sales itself. Okay, so secondly, Indian food processing industry accounts for around 32% of the country's total food market. Okay, if you look at the total food market, so in fact the food processing industry overall contribution is much lesser. It is just 32%. So however, according to estimates, this number will further rise. The consumers across India will prefer more and more processed foods. So therefore, the food processing industry is considered as one of the largest industries in India, and in fact it is ranked as 5th in terms of production, consumption, export and the expected growth from the food processing industry. Okay, so after that the food processing industry has been contributing up to 8.80 or 8.39 of gross value added of total manufacturing products. So for the manufacturing products there is a gross value added. So there's a gross value added, and the food processing sector alone has been contributing around 8.80 to 8.39 gross value added, particularly from the agriculture sector. So therefore, in this context, 30% of India's exports are from the food processing industry alone. Okay, so it is also significantly contributing for the India's exports, and apart from that, it is also contributing to 6% of the total industrial investment. Okay. So because of such a huge potential of the food processing sector, it is considered as one of the most important, most significant, and the sunrise industry because of its huge potential. Now after that, the Indian government food market is currently valued at 1.3 billion. Okay, so total food processing market is considered as 1.3 billion, and now this market size has been growing at a rapid pace. Its compound annual growth rate is around 20%. So 20% growth rate is not a normal growth rate. It is a huge growth rate in the food processing sector. Now in this context, why the food processing industry is significant in India? Okay, so we need to understand the significance of the food processing industry. Okay, so the food processing industry in India is significant because of the following reasons. So what are those reasons? Firstly, it enhances the farmers' income. Now we have been looking to double the farmers' income. Okay, so we have already announced the goal of doubling farmers' income by 2022. However, the farmers' income has not significantly increased. But because of the food processing sector, the farmers can realize better prices for their produce. So because the agriculture produce will be better utilized and the produce value will be further augmented or added. So therefore it further enhances the farmers' income, and it also significantly reduces the dependence on mandis, local mandis, or the middlemen. Now after that, we need to talk about the minimization of the wastage. So in India, the post-harvest losses is one of the major challenge that we are facing. So therefore, because of the post-harvest losses, farmers are also significantly facing a huge losses in terms of agriculture. So however, due to the food processing industry, the produce can be taken to the nearby local food processing industry, so thereby quickly adding value to the produce. In this way, we can minimize the wastage. So at all stages in the food processing chain of development, infrastructure for storage, transportation, processing, agro-food produce. So everything will be included in the food processing industry, thereby significantly minimizing the wastage. So after that, we need to talk about the introduction of modern technology. Now food industry or food processing industry, when private sector has taken up this industry, when 100% FDI is allowed into the food processing sector, then the private sector will come in. They will bring in more technology expertise into the food processing industry. So therefore it could further resulting in more and more efficiency and effectiveness of the food processing industry. So after that, we need to talk about the research and development component in the food processing sector. Okay. So because of the research and development that is being conducted in the food processing sector, so we can further minimize the losses, we can increase the efficiency, and we can further develop or work on the packaging. So therefore that could further help us in exporting these food produce. So this is another major advantage or significance of the food processing industry. So after that, the government providing a policy support, a concerted policy support for the food processing sector is also important, because the support for creation of infrastructure, capacity expansion, upgradation, and supportive measures for growth of this sector is very, very important, because we have discussed that it has a huge potential in various aspects: employment generation, exports, and contribution to economic growth, women empowerment. So therefore the policy support is also very important for the rise of or growth of this sector. And we need to promote exports also. because the food processing sector is one of the most potential sector. So if we correctly use this sector, we can increase the exports, the food exports. When we increase the food exports, that ultimately benefit the farmers, and in fact, a robust export supply chain in India would further attract more and more investments into the food processing sector. Now after that, we need to talk about the potential of the food processing sector in creation of gainful employment opportunities. So it also creates a gainful employment opportunities. So yesterday also we have discussed that according to Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, so total unemployment rate in India is around 6.8%. So this is one of the highest levels of unemployment. So in this context, the food processing industry will create a huge employment opportunities, particularly in the rural areas. Okay, so when we talk about employment, both direct and indirect employment opportunities will be provided by the food processing sector. So apart from that, the food processing sector will also act as a bridge between agriculture and the manufacturing sectors. Now that is the essence of reducing or minimizing the wastage in the agriculture sector. So after that, we need to talk about the malnutrition, hunger, and stunting, wasting. So these are one of the most crucial problems that we are still not able to address. So however, with the fortification of food through the food processing industry, fortification of food through food processing industry will help us reduce malnutrition. Okay, so processed food, when fortified with vitamins and other essential minerals, they can significantly reduce the nutritional gap in the population. So after that, we need to focus on crop diversification as well. Now wheat and rice are dominant crops in India. However, apart from wheat and rice, we need to focus on pulses, cereals, and other horticulture crops, fruits and vegetables. So because that is the essence of growth of the food processing industry. So therefore, the food processing will require different types of inputs. So therefore, creating an incentive for the farmer to grow and diversify crops. Now, crop diversification is beneficial not just for the farmers but also for the ecology, and also improves the soil fertility. So in this context, when you write the conclusion, in conclusion, you just emphasize on the challenges that the food processing sector has been facing and give appropriate suggestions. Okay, so that the conclusion would be more impactful and you will score good marks. Okay, now what are the other measures that should be taken in order to encourage or promote the food processing sector in India? So the next question is about the life expectancy. Okay, now India is a country where we are in a population transition. Okay, so our population transition has been taking place now. In population transition, because of increasing health infrastructure, life expectancy has been increasing apart from education. So since life expectancy at birth has been increasing, so the question here, it is asking that an increase in the life expectancy in the country has led to a new health challenges for the community. Okay, so for example, life expectancy has increased from 80 to 90. Now the old age population will significantly increase. Now old age population are not economically productive. So therefore, old age economy, we need to finance more and more welfare programs for the older age population. Okay, so that should not contribute significantly for the economic development of any country. So still resources are distributed among these sections, and disproportionate amount of resources have to be spent on the people, the old age people. Now in this context, so what are the challenges? What steps need to be taken to meet those challenges? So the question in a nutshell, saying that increasing life expectancy of old age population is not good for the economy. It creates new challenges for the economy. So what are those challenges and what steps must be taken to deal with those challenges? Now what exactly is the life expectancy? So life expectancy is defined as the estimate of the number of years an individual is expected to live. Okay, so for example, each country have a different life expectancy. So if you look at the Western countries, the Western developed countries, so they have a different life expectancy. So they have a higher life expectancy at birth. So countries like India, they have a middle life expectancy. Now our life expectancy has also been increasing because of improving infrastructure, healthcare, etc. So okay. Now, the life expectancy at birth is most common measure of the overall life expectancy. Okay, so this is what the life expectancy. Life expectancy means the estimate of the number of years an individual is expected to live. Now, after that, so if you look at India, India has been witnessing a steady increase in the life expectancy. Okay, so why there's a steady increase in the life expectancy? The reasons we have already discussed. So because of those reasons, the life expectancy has been increasing. So apart from those reasons, there are other reasons also. For example, enhancement of the public health coverage, universal health coverage, and improvement in sanitation as well as hygiene. Okay, so improvement in sanitation, hygiene, universal health coverage, vaccination. So all these factors have making India significantly improve its life expectancy at birth. So currently the total life expectancy at birth for India is around 70 years. Okay, it is around 70 years. Now in this context, so what are the major challenges that are created by the increasing life expectancy in the community? So there are a number of challenges. Firstly, the first major challenge is extra burden on the already stressed public healthcare system. Now, if you look at the Indian healthcare system, it is stressed. It is facing a lot of challenges like a lack of adequate hospitals and healthcare staff. Even doctor-patient ratio is very low. Okay, so doctor-patient ratio is very high compared to what WHO has mandated. And in fact, the medical colleges are very lesser, the infrastructure is very poor, the patient bed ratio is also very high. So therefore, in this context, increasing the life expectancy will also burden on the already stressed public healthcare system. So this is the first point. Secondly, a vulnerability for the new diseases. For example, recently COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so because of the increasing life expectancy and more population, what generally happens is that the vulnerability to new diseases will further increases, particularly because of the air pollution, recurring viruses and other pandemics. So because of these reasons, the vulnerability to diseases will further increase. Now after that, India has not witnessed an increase in healthy life expectancy. Okay, so life expectancy has been increasing, but the expectancy is not a healthy life expectancy. So means that people have been living for the longer years, but they have been facing several illness, several diseases. Okay, so this further increases the existing burden on the healthcare system, and significant amount of the financial resources have to be spent on those ill patients. So particularly, there's a risk of non-communicable diseases, and that has been spreading at a rapid pace. Now after that, the financial burden, we have earlier discussed about the burden on the health infrastructure. Now apart from the burden on the health infrastructure, there's a huge burden on the, particularly financial burden on the families, and not just families, even state will also face a huge burden from the populations. Okay, because aging population require a proper health insurance coverage, medical treatment costs, and at least one individual need to take care of these aging population. So all these factors will further increases the burden on the family and state as well. So in this context, accelerated utilization of resources will also takes place. Whenever distribution of resources takes place, disproportionate amount of resources have to be spent on these ill population. Now after that, so what are the steps that have to be taken in order to address these challenges? Please remember, this answer have to be written in just 150 words. Okay, so no need to elaborate this answer. So nevertheless, the steps can be taken to address this challenge. So what are the steps that are required to address these challenges? So firstly, we need to talk about the increasing awareness about diseases and health. So this is the first factor, because even though life expectancy has been increasing, when people are aware about the diseases and the health care that required to be taken, then they will not fall ill. So thereby the extra burden on the financial resources and healthcare infrastructure can be significantly reduced. Now after that, we need to talk about, for example, there are people who living healthier lives, and they require lesser resources, and medical care also, so because we need to focus on those people, we need to encourage the healthy lifestyle as well. So this can overall lead to less economic burden on both families and the state. Okay, so there's no need for spending on the medical requirements. There's no need to look after the old age populations. So therefore these measures have to be taken. Awareness, healthy lifestyles, and taking care of the non-communicable diseases, and proper medication. So everything have to be taken care of. So apart from that, the healthcare infrastructure is also significantly lagging behind compared to several other developing and developed countries. So therefore we need to spend at least 3% of our GDP on the healthcare itself, so that we can significantly improve our healthcare sector, so that we can make sure that the quality and access are also ensured for the providing universal health care access to these people, and further increase the life expectancy. So in conclusion, the increased life expectancy has both positive and negative effects. So with proper management, it can be utilized for affecting positive outcome in the larger community and the country. Okay, so no doubt increasing life expectancy has both positive and negative consequences, but we need to be focused on the positive outcomes and improving the larger community. So that is how you need to conclude this answer. So the next question is about, it is from the environment and ecology section. So the question here asking is that each year a large amount of plant material, cellulose, is deposited on the surface of planet Earth. Okay, so no doubt every year a huge amount of plant material and plant cellulose is deposited on the surface of the planet Earth. So what are the natural processes this cellulose undergoes before yielding carbon dioxide? So ultimately the cellulose and the plant material will be converted into carbon dioxide. So what are the natural processes? We need to write about the natural processes. So what are the natural processes this cellulose undergoes before yielding carbon dioxide, water, and other end products? So this answer have to be written in 150 words. Now this is briefly about the carbon cycle. Now this is how the carbon cycle actually takes place. So atmosphere, the carbon will be absorbed by the plant, and from the plant to atmosphere through biogenic CO2. So this is briefly about the carbon cycle. Now in this context, we need to understand what exactly is the cellulose. Now cellulose is actually a general term that is used for describing hemicellulose and cellulose. Okay, so cellulose usually comes from stalks, stems, and leaves of various plants. So also remember, cellulose is only present in plants but not in animals. So cellulose makes up about 60 to 90% of the all terrestrial biomass, and the cellulose usually come from many sources. So what are those sources? So they include switchgrass, prairie grass, woody crops, and residential forestry remains. So from all these factors, cellulose usually, these are the major sources of cellulose. Now in this context, when you write the introduction, you just introduce about the cellulose. Now cellulose is actually a complex carbohydrate, or it is a polysaccharide. Okay, so this is known as a carbohydrate or a polysaccharide. It usually consists of around 3000 or more glucose units. Okay, so cellulose is present in plants, and 60% of the plant material is made up of cellulose. So therefore the cellulose are consisting of around 3000 or more glucose units. So the basic structural component of plant cell walls. Okay, so if you look at the plant's cell walls, cellulose is the major component. Now cellulose comprises of about 33% of all vegetable material, 90% of cotton and 50% of wood are cellulose. Okay, so and it is most abundant of all naturally occurring organic compounds. So if you look at all naturally occurring organic compounds, cellulose is the most abundant aspect. Okay, so however, non-digestible by humans. Cellulose is non-digestible by humans. So cellulose is a food for herbivorous animals. For example, there are grass-eating animals. So cellulose is usually a food for the herbivorous animals like cows and horses. However, cellulose is non-digestible by the human beings. So because they retain it long enough for the digestion by microorganisms present in the alimentary canal. Now, if you look at these herbivorous animals, these animals can retain the cellulose for a longer period of times in their alimentary canal or alimentary tract. So therefore, the microorganisms will act and then modify the food. Now, protozoans in the gut of insects such as termites also digest cellulose. So these animals can digest cellulose, but human beings cannot digest cellulose. So however, cellulose has a greater economic importance because the cellulose is very often used for manufacturing papers and fibers. And and is a chemically modified to yield various other substances, and those substances will be used in manufacturing of items like plastics, photographic films and other rayon like elements. Okay, so these are the major advantages or the benefits of cellulose. Now in this context, so what are the natural processes undergone by cellulose while actually undergoing degradation before yielding carbon dioxide, water and end products? So this is the key demand of the question. Okay, the question is asked about this aspect only. Now firstly, it fragmentation takes place. Now what exactly the meaning of fragmentation? Fragmentation means breaking down. Okay, so the process of breaking of detritus into a small pieces by the detrivores. Okay, so when it breaks down, it is called as detritus, and detritus is done by detrivores such as earthworm. Secondly, we need to talk about the leaching. So leaching, what does leaching? Leaching is releasing of nutrients. Okay, leaching means releasing of nutrients into the soil. So this is known as leaching process, and after that there's a process called catabolism usually takes place. Now what is catabolism? Catabolism is a process of breaking down the complex molecules into the simpler molecules by microorganisms, bacteria and fungi. So because of the action of these microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, catabolism takes place. Now in catabolism, the complex molecules will be converted into the simple molecules. So after that, the humification also takes place. So formation of humus. So humification is formation of humus. Now in humification, the process of formation of dark colored substances called humus will be formed. Now humus is one of the most fertile and it supports plant growth. Okay, so therefore it undergoes microbial action at a slower rate. Now after that, we need to talk about the mineralization as well. So mineralization is actually the process of degradation of humus to release the inorganic nutrients. Okay, so these are processes undergoes by the cellulose. So finally, the inorganic nutrients released during the mineralization is taken up by the plants and biosynthesis of cellulose. So that usually takes place, and the dead and decaying matter will undergo the same 5 processes that were already explained. Okay, so above to yield carbon dioxide, water and other end products. Okay, so that's all for today, and tomorrow also we'll discuss few answers. Thank you.